Hello, welcome back to my channel. Last video we did all of this subjective kind of pathfinding information to get us from astronauts to math. We talked about Clifford, Lucy, and Lisa at the end of that video. We are now starting with the new video. This video starts off covering a lot of things like the name games we were talking about. We'll start with Amelie. We'll work our way all the way up to string, ring theory, and knots. And hopefully we'll be able to fit it all into one video. If it gets to be over 1 hour, I'll split it up. But without further ado, let's get back into the math of Death Stranding.
A lot of people have complained that Amelie, her name Ami or Ame means soul, and then it was basically a play on words for soul lie, which people felt like did not make sense because technically like Amelie has a soul and it's Bridget who should be Amelie because she's the one without a soul or lying about having a soul. I think we have totally missed the point on that one. I think it was supposed to throw us off like that and just be kind of like yeah, she is lying about her soul, haha. Lie algebra is huge. It is related to Clifford algebra, which wild that they're related. And I think that play on words was intentional because lie algebra heavily includes XYs, which most math does, but bear with me. X coordinate y equals xy minus yx. If you notice, there is symmetry there, which I think is interesting. It's my understanding that lattices connect us to string theory. Lie algebra gives us this thing called a lattice, which looks like a circle with a hole in the middle. Lattices look like this, and this is the E8 lattice. Gorgeous, but again, a circle with a dot in the middle, really. If you look, is the E8 lattice, okay? This E8 lattice is related to the bosonic strings. If you're a nerd and you thought at some point, isn't Higgs related to that?
What are you gonna do to her? Keep the extinction entity safe until the slate is wiped clean.
Because there was a lot of talk on Higgs and Higgs particles and all that stuff. This up, you might not know, it has a different name. It is from a Lie group, L-I-E. It's called the E8. It is called the killing form. Amelie, Lie algebra, the E8 lattice is called the killing form. I need someone else to be losing their mind with me. After that, we are going to go into string theory, which is what bosonic, Higgs, particles, all that is. Before we do that, I have some fun side note that I would like to tell you. There is a French physicist named Louise de Broglie, don't know, proposed in 1924 that electrons and other discrete bits of matter, which until this point, people were just like, didn't really know much about them, have wave properties such as wavelength and frequency, which we know of the beach is a familiar thing to us. We also have Lorentz, who basically invented graphs that show us space-time. So if you have been seeing over here, where I have this 4D looking model, Lorentz, Lou perhaps? Lorentz basically gave us like the concept for how to see things in space-time in a very basic way. I'm totally probably brutalizing the math. Instead of us only seeing things on this certain graph, we are now able to see not simply from our perspective, but from a 4D perspective where we are seeing from the object's movement as well, which just means it looks like that. Now, what's cool about that? It's a circle with a dot in it.
I am a single point.
Which I just feel like is everywhere. Those were the two people most recognizable to me that both seem like they could have the name Lou or Louise, and they both kind of have something to do with physics, but that is a very loose connection. So we're going to move on to the Higgs boson particle. We're going to call it the Higgs particle. Long story short, the Higgs particle is named that way because people got lazy and didn't want to say the full name of all the people that found it. It got shortened into the Higgs particle, or just Higgs. The Higgs particle, it's pretty well established in lore that Higgs Monaghan is named after Peter Higgs and this guy named Engelbert. And they are kind of famous for this whole Higgs particle thing. The thing about Higgs in the game is he often calls himself the God particle, which is based on the name of a book that's talking about the Higgs particle. I don't know how much Hideo cares about like the real world implications of like Higgs saying that. The book called The God Particle, that's where it comes from. The author wanted to call it the God particle. His novelist told him no, and that he wanted him to just shorten it to the God particle because it would sell better. This was an issue for the scientific community because obviously this implies things that are not necessarily true. It implies that the Higgs particle was kind of like the reason for the Big Bang. Basically, when the Higgs particle touched a different particle, everything exploded into mass.
Once there was an explosion, a bang which set a planet spinning in that space.
People who are Christian and believe that God created the universe, and scientists who, think the Higgs particle did it, it was basically a marketing ploy. So I'm not sure that when Higgs called himself the God particle, I would think he's well researched enough to know that that's not actually what it means. But at the same time, Hideo really pays attention to details. So it could just be that the chiral network didn't have enough information on that for him to realize that, which that's something that a lot of people use to claim that Higgs is like not that bright or that he's stupid or whatever. I don't think so. I think anyone that understands like Higgs particles probably isn't dumb, but maybe he just likes the metaphor, which a lot of people did, and that's why they bought the book, and that's why the scientific community is like, that is a terrible name, because now people are relating this particle to like a religious thing. The Higgs particle, for those of us who now know, which is everyone because I've just told you, is a giant unstable thing that decays fast. I say giant. It's a particle that we can't see, so it's not that big, but they call it a big particle that is unstable and decays fast, which it couples with particles to create mass. So that's a weird concept to think about, but basically the Higgs particle is nothing, really. It's like a neutral kind of thing, but when it hits a particle, it creates this explosion, as Death Stranding likes to say. In the beginning, there was an explosion, and that thing is then given mass. The crazy thing about the Higgs particle is how funny it is as like a literary device. So you have Higgs, who is unstable and is decaying, and is possibly decaying in the Death Stranding 2 trailer, but is definitely like mentally decaying in the Death Stranding 1, and is left on the beach to decay.
Death or eternal solitude on the beach.
Now, is he like big? I don't know, but he is like our big antagonist in Death Stranding 1, so possibly. I do want to point out here that we haven't talked about symmetry in a little bit, chiral symmetry, and if we are to flip Sam the other direction, we get mass. In real life, if a Higgs particle touches something, it creates mass. In the game, obviously he doesn't create Sam, but he and Sam are at odds. And so if you have this nothingness that is Higgs and mass that might represent Sam, that's kind of interesting. I think that could be a metaphor that Hideo is trying to use. Higgs particles are hard to explain, and so people use analogies. The analogies specifically used for the Higgs particle are rainbows. Where have we seen those in the game? Prisms, which I think is an interesting comparison or analogy, because when a rainbow hits a prism, it's basically refracted. We have water ripples, which are used to, you know, give us an analogy. And we have a lot of beach references in Death Stranding. And then electric fields are also a big deal. Now, I would like to show you again what an electric field looks like. And that would be these, which I feel like we see throughout the trailer in a lot of places. And hopefully when you go back and look now, you will start noticing circle with a dot everywhere. Circles on everything. And these X-looking motifs seem to be on everything. The other crazy thing about the goldstone, let's talk about the goldstones. In physics, goldstone bosons are things that exhibit spontaneous breakdown, Higgs in the game, of continuous symmetries. Now, the reason I even bring this up, because I don't have a good reason for it like relating to anything, but the mask that Higgs wears is gold, and I just thought that was interesting. I feel like maybe that's something that isn't related, but I think I could totally see Hideo being like, oh, let's give him a gold mask because gold. So that was something that I did notice that I wanted to put out here in case anyone else sees something else about the gold. Now, chiralium in the game is gold, so it may just have to do with that and the fact that like Higgs and chiral stuff are all related. On his hood, we see LC. There's been a lot of talk about LC in my Discord chat. I came up with some different things when we were discussing it, like liability company. It was actually the thing that made me think of ludens. I thought maybe it stood for ludens company. I also think the UCA font is similar to that. Instead of it being like LC, maybe it's something else. Maybe it's a different letter, but I think it's LC is what it's supposed to stand for. Liability company would be funny because he is a liability. Ludens company could make sense because ludens is a huge thing in the game, and he already has like this I'm playing a game motif and theme about him. And he says game over and homo ludens and all that stuff. And I want to say for the ludens people who are like, yes, we're gonna be ludens. Higgs boson's big thing is that it implies that in thousands of years, if this Higgs thing is real, which we have found out it is, we will be replaced, more than likely, in billions of years, that the universe's forces, particles, and structures would cease to exist as we know them and be replaced with different ones, which I think could very well be used as an argument to say that we are on our way to homo ludens in the game. I, upon researching, now believe that the LC is a play on the Large Hadron Collider, which is how we figured out the Higgs particle even existed. We knew it existed, but because the Higgs particle is nothing, and you only know that it exists when it interacts with a particle to create mass, it's one of those weird math concepts where it exists, and you know it exists, but to prove it exists is so much harder. And so they had to create this Large Hadron, I think is how you say it, collider, which basically attempted to create Higgs bosons and other particles for observation and study. I'm thinking that the LC probably won't mean Large Collider in the game, but that it will be a play off of this. We can still talk about the fact that there's some kind of goofy stuff about how the LHC, it is said to produce at very high rate. I say I'm founding because like he's giving out all this product.
Seeing as how I've been distributing the fruits of this fine factory all over the continent. Guns and violence, the whole damn world could be yours. Same as it ever was.
We're going to go back to the very beginning when we talked about Euclidean math, the Turing machine, and Clifford algebra. We talked about Euclidean math and how it has to do with world rhythms. In the first game, Sam plays a harmonica. That's the instrument of choice that we are familiar with. If you are thinking about the first game, you imagine this, or think of it this way. Everything in math kind of comes back to the start, but in that game, in reference to music, we have the harmonica. But when we use the harmonica, we are singing a song that we heard when we were a kid. So we don't know where Clifford heard the song. We assume he makes it up because who would know what a baby is? But I assume he means baby, and we've just, whatever. Ignore it, it's video game logic. So Clifford sings to BB. Which is Sam. Then Sam sings to BB. With his harmonica. And now in the Death Stranding 2 trailer, Higgs is singing the same song with his guitar to a BB, who we don't know.
So let love warm you till the morning.
In the Higgs Boson research, we found what are called B-bar oscillators. And these B mesons, M-E-S-O-N-S, Higgs found B-bar oscillators. These oscillators, these B mesons or B-bars, BBs, oscillate or vibrate between matter and antimatter. The BBs in the real world related to the Higgs particle are in between matter and antimatter, just like Clifford's BB, Sam's BB, Lou, are in between the world of life and death, matter, antimatter. Okay, I thought that was really cool. Now, this seems like a really spot-on reference to BBs in the game being between life and death, and I think it is. But harmonic oscillators exist in real life too and are part of string theory. Now, string theory looks like this. When strings in string theory oscillate, this is what they look like normally. This is what they look like when they are vibrated. Now, if you're someone like me who has watched the trailer a couple times, then you might recognize the way that Higgs' gun looked whenever he was, his guitar. Whenever he was playing the instrument, much like how Sam plays the harmonica, he's creating a harmonic oscillator that looks just like what happens whenever you vibrate a string. If you look at his guitar, which this is not the best photo, but you're free to watch the trailer again, there is a single line, the same strings that we see throughout the trailer to show that people are puppets, that they're connected to the seam, that they're hanging from the sky, the little robot guys. These white lines are everywhere. He has a string on his guitar that he strums or vibrates, and it creates this lightning that looks just like a harmonic oscillator. So once I found that, I was like, I'm on to something. That makes me want to show you the other part that I have been really excited to show you guys, which is his gun. I would like for you to see what a Higgs boson particle looks like when we shot it through NASA. If that is not freaking, like, image for image the same thing. So the red lines are very similar, the yellow in the middle, and you might be saying, I don't think so. I think it looks just like his gun. So similar to his Odra deck. I guess I keep calling it a gun, but his Odra deck. I think that is super intentional. That is what happens whenever you hit the two crazy things together in the collider thing. I don't really remember what they're hitting together, but when you do the collision that creates the Higgs boson particle, Boom, that's what you get. So we have the gun, what it looks like when you have a harmonic oscillator, and then what it looked like when they first created the Higgs boson at NASA. These harmonic oscillators are string theory. Before we can talk about the string theory, we have to talk a little bit about chiral mirror imagery symmetry. Whew, that's a lot of words. So chiral mirror image symmetry happens because of the Higgs boson particles. When the bosons are what they call electroweak, that is when the chirality or the chiralium, I don't know if chiralium's a real word. I think that's just in the game, but chirality happens in these weak bosons. Chirality, it refers to handedness. So that's where we talked about left hand, right hand symmetry, but also it really means clockwise, counterclockwise. But it's showing us an example of chiral symmetry with hands. Before we get into the hands that are on the screen, I just want to say that scaling triangles are also chiral. I don't have anything related to triangles in this video, except for the fact that I feel like Bridges has a lot of triangle, like where they put all their extra stuff at is a triangle, but I don't think it's a scaling triangle. I think it's an equilateral, but I just wanted to put that out there in case you know more about triangles in the game than I do, that scaling triangles are chiral. Weird, who knew? Chirality is famously found in amino acids, which is what it's showing in this photo here. And if that rings a bell, it could be from the trailer, where we are told that amino acids are found in protein, which are found in the weird egg thing that we find whoever we think it's Tomorrow or Lou or Rainey in the egg. He calls it
primordial soup.
We are concerned about this because it relates to proteins. We did not know proteins and amino acids and all that stuff, Higgs bosons, all goes back to what we talked about in the very beginning, Euclidean math. So we're talking about Euclidean math again. Something about Euclidean math that you should know is that it relates to the Higgs, neutral Higgs break weak symmetry. And that's what gives us chirality. Chiral symmetry is important to amino acids. They're like proteins, which are made up of amino acids, have this really crazy thing called a trefoil knot fold. And I just want to know, what do you think of when you think of knots in relation to Death Stranding? Well, the first thing I thought of, because it has a freaking K in front of it, is Knot City. That's exactly what I need you to be thinking of, because we are going to go straight into knot theory, which is part of string theory, which all comes around to ring theory. In knot theory, which is a part of string theory, we have trefoil knots. Trefoil knots are the most non-trivial knot, or the simplest knot, meaning you can't go any lower than this trefoil knot. That's the lowest you can go, and the knot still be a knot, basically, and be important. A trefoil knot can be obtained by joining loose ends of a common overhand knot, and it makes a loop. I don't know if that's important or not. Also, not totally sure. This is what it says a trefoil knot fold looks like in protein. Could not tell you if that's important to anything, but that's what it looks like. It is, however, very important in shape. Once you start looking at the trefoil knot, you're gonna just have your mind blown. In literature, a foil is someone who is like your opposite, like they represent the opposite of your ideals. So for instance, we might have Sam versus Higgs as like a really common foil, good versus evil, things like that. If Hideo is going to go the route of literature foils, we would have a trefoil, which is 3 foils, and our main 3 characters are Fragile, Higgs, and Sam. But that could change in the next one. But I feel like they're all still going to be very important, because that was the main people we were showed in the trailer, and they're the main people that we've we've come to know that we have connected with. So that's a possibility, that it's just going to literally be like a literal foil and nothing else. However, Hideo has shown me already that he has a lot of thought in physics and these algorithms and everything. After finding the Clifford and Lie algebra and their connections to Lucy and Lisa as names, I think that we can safely assume that this is probably an intentional relationship, especially as we get into all the connections to game 1. So this trefoil that you're seeing in motion is the simplest knot that has value. Non-trivial knots are considered to have bridge numbers. This is where I feel like everything started to really click. Bridge numbers, bridges, bridge math. We talked earlier about harmonic oscillators and the BBs and how music might be involved. Bridge math is the basis for arts and music, rhythm, things like that. The bridge numbers are the crossings that have to do with knots. And to relate this to the knot cities, we actually have to talk about string theory first. This trefoil knot is drawn with bridge number 2. And we have to talk about the fact that strings can be open or closed, because we've all seen a string before. I wish I had a string to show you, but let's just imagine that this pencil, an open string would be like a line in its simplest form. An open string that is not connected, so is a line, can also be seen as just a dot. So consider a line to either just be straight where you can see the ends and they don't connect to anything, or think of it as a dot because you're looking at the line straight on. Okay, so a dot or a line is a open string. A closed string would be a circle in its simplest form, which I do have an example of a circle. So that would be a string that is knotted. Even though you can't see where they tied the knot, it is a closed string, therefore it is considered a knot. Knots are either going to look somewhat like this, so they're gonna be overlapping in some way, or they'll look like this, and this is what we call the simplest knot, or the unknot, or the trivial knot, because it only has the one connection. Before we get into anything too crazy, I want to play some word association. We've already talked about Clifford, knots, bridges, Lisa, Lucy. I think we even talked about the Magellan earlier. When we talk about strings, we might also call them loose strands. We have a string, but if I was talking about maybe a piece of hair, I'd say, oh, you have a loose strand. Let me get that for you. Again, we have word association with strings and strands, which, if you didn't know, Bridget Strand is, you know, Sam's mom, and he goes by Sam Strand near the end of Death Stranding 1. Not by choice, but because that's what the episode is basically called. How that relates to the unknot is that it is one strand or one string. It is also considered a knot, but it's only a trivial knot, one that maybe doesn't have as much value because it is not, you know, there's nothing else going on. It's just a closed loop. So we can think of the unknot as the simplest knot. There is also a square knot, and it is where you have two trefoils, which we talked about earlier. That would be this knot, and they are connected together to create like a chiral symmetry, and it looks very similar to this, but again, we're going to talk about Samurai Baby in a minute, and they actually have that motif. Consider when we talk about this unknot, and we're going to skip over the square knot, that to create a knot, you must cross the string over itself. Both bridges and the knots and the bridges in the game. When creating a knot, like this trefoil knot, you have to get from a closed knot or an unknot, the simplest knot, to get that into a trefoil knot, you have to take part of the string and you have to cross it over itself to create a bridge. Bridges math, I think I already said, is connected with art, music, and rhythm. And it's an important part of Death Stranding because Sam links bridges to the Knot City. We've talked about bridges are when you cross a string over itself. So that's all you're doing. You're just, it's a circle that then you cross over itself. So you're not really adding, doing anything crazy. Links are a little bit different. So bridges are crossing points. So that would be like here where this is crossing over. Links in knot theory are considered a collection of knots, but they are not actually intersected. So think of it like this. A link is its own circle or its own closed loop, but it is linked with others to create a knot, but that knot does not become a part of the other knots. So really all you have to know about this is that a bridge is a loop crossing itself, like mixing itself up, knotting itself, and a link is a knot of however many crossings that connects to something else. So I don't know, it's not really that important. What's funny though is there's a Whitehead link, and I don't know if you guys noticed, but Sam the man, let's go look at that hair. Yeah, do we have, yeah, Whitehead. So a Whitehead link in knot theory is one of the most basic links, and it can be drawn as an alternating link with 5 crossings, and it basically looks like a circle with a figure 8 loop. I don't know if I'm going to get this right, but it made sense in my head. So basically you have the Whitehead link, which I think is hilarious because I think it looks like Sam and he has white hair, which I find very strange. And it creates a circle with an infinity sign in it, which is interesting to me. 5 circles theorem, I'm not going to get in the weeds of it. I just think it's funny because it makes a star. If you look in here, there is a star made out of this. And we see stars on Lou's bib. We see these circles, this shape almost, on different parts of the Ludens astronaut. And I just wondered if it was like something that they were kind of referencing in the trailer. Now, we've said he has white hair in the trailer. However, I would like for us to consider that he also had 5 people help him cross back into the world of the living from the beach. He had BB. He had Lochna / Mama, who I'm going to count as one person. That might be cheating. He had Fragile, he had Deadman, and he had Heartman. I don't count Die Hardman because he only gave him a gun to use in order to find him. He didn't actually participate. We have 5 people crossing. We have the Whitehead link. So I think there's something to that. The other thing is a Whitehead link with the 5 crossings looks like a circle, which is your simplest knot, with an infinity sign. And infinity signs have represented things like life, DNA, forever, cycles, things like that. So it would be silly to say that there's probably no metaphor there, because I think there's definitely a metaphor. Whether or not this has anything to do with it, I don't know. But I do think in the beginning of the game in Death Stranding 1, when you see the 5 strandings, that's what we are supposed to think it is. But at the end of the game, when you have finished it, you realize that that is a vision of the future. We might be able to, assume that that is the 5 people that help him cross back over. That is his connection that he makes, and that's the only reason he comes back.
You're still connected.
We're going to also talk about circles and fragile rings. The trefoil knot appears in the game as well as in the forms of regions and cities. I'm going to show you my really pretty picture that I'm sure you guys are going to be like, this is a trefoil knot. We have a link right here. Just look at that. And it looks like these circles that I'm showing on the screen. Those 3 links, 3 circles, those 3 unknots, I think represent the 3 regions in the game because there are 7 cities called knot. And if you count the spaces, you have 7 spots, 7 cities that are called knots in 3 regions that are basically their own thing. And then we go and we link them up. They don't intersect, but we link them. So they're still their own region. 2 of them were destroyed though. Trefoil knots appear on baby katana samurai baby dude's sword. Okay, so that's this.
Thank you guys so much for sitting through part 2. We're gonna move on in part 3 and we're gonna talk about Samurai Baby as well as Mama and Lochna and how they're evidence of everything that we've been talking about, especially with Mama's baby. And I hope I'll see you there. If you enjoyed this or you have any comments, please write them down below. There are timestamps, so if you want to go back and look at anything, you can. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!